for stakeholder engagement because it truly is our strategy together. We are taking it to a vote to the board September the 29th, so next week. The governance board is voting on the high-level strategy and a lot of elements of that. We've been working on the strategy through the entire organization. So this is not just, my strategy or, the board strategy. It truly is our strategy because we've done such a lot of work on the open stakeholders. So I wanted you to know where we are. We'll be rolling this out to the broader community at the November conference. Next slide. Oh, I was going to let you know, I love to give away tickets to the conference. So ever so often, this is not must be present to win. So ignore that part because I had some people call us from Australia, said they weren't going to be on there. We're going to listen to the recording. So you must not be present to win. And if you are already registered to attend the conference, you may give this pass to another person. And I want to let you know that we've come up as we can be sometimes. We can get very sophisticated on how we do some of this, but we couldn't figure it out. So what Donna has done is she has run a list of all the registered people, and we picked out numbers. And so Donna, would you go ahead and we're going to type in the chat or somehow. Donna, can you let me know where you're going to post this? Because you're going to draw a name, and then you're going to announce who has the ticket.
Yeah, so what I've done, I actually found a randomizer software to do this. And so everyone who registered prior to the top of the hour, so if you registered on your way in at straight up time to start the webinar, you are included in this. And so I will have it run a name from the list of registered participants, and I will then paste it into the chat. So the first winner is, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your names, the first winner is Andrea Cortesi. And so we will email you, Andrea, with your conference pass information that you can either use or share, as Lorraine said. Congratulations.
So we're going to do 8 of those through the course of our togetherness time today. And so, yeah, very excited about the upcoming conference. We'll hear more about that in just a few minutes. So you'll see some of these coming up over through the presentation. Next slide. We're going to dive in. So this is where we're going. We've been working on, there's a number of different recipes you can use for a strategy. We are, for our 2030 plus, Climate Plus strategy, it is playing to win. It's a strong methodology that literally takes us through what are our goals and aspirations. What's our role? Because we're not the ones purchasing the fabric. We're not the ones, doing the work at the dirt, so to speak. So what is our role as that catalyst, influencer, giving of information or whatever, and what is our value proposition? And through all that work, especially with a lot of you on this call, is like, what are our value drivers and what is it that helps us move the pendulum or the continuum along the continuum? And that's boiled down to trusted authority, accelerator, and convener. And it comes into how do we actually execute on that. So just remember those 3 places. Some of you probably already heard it, trusted authority, and we'll go into the next slide and it'll give us a little bit more information on defining those. So the trusted authority piece is about building and verifying data collection, developing integrity solutions, and expanding our reputation as a reliable and accurate source of information for what a preferred fiber and material is and how we improve that over time. I'm going to skip over to the right-hand side of convener. This is another very strong component of what we do, is bringing people together. And not any people, it's the right people, and lead in articulating those priorities and co-create solutions. And one of the purposes of the roundtables specifically is to identify barriers to growth for whatever topic or place or fiber you're working on, and create not just that collective solution, but we want to move into connected solutions. And that's where it comes into accelerating. We know we have good solutions, proven solutions, but it's time to drive them to scale. So we're really talking about what the levers are for driving that and scaling the conversion to high impact fibers. And how do we really exert an influence on the thought leadership of being able to address those various needs? And again, the roundtables play a critical role. Next slide, Donna. This is just another view of that a little bit, because the other plus in our Climate Plus piece is that we know we cannot do it alone. Many of you may have seen the announcement last week of our partnership that we're evolving with Sustainable Apparel Coalition, Apparel Impact Institute, and ZDHC. We know we're going to have to do it with other partners and the other fashion conveners that are in this place and space, that we must partner to make this happen. So there's going to be places where we say, okay, here's areas where we lead. This is our strength. But then where are the areas where we say, here's where we're going to actively partner and support that role? And good feedback there from the community when we've had our various calls on where the strengths are to lead and where we need to like be that supporting partner. And because there's so many other good things happening in that space, we don't want to set up duplicative initiatives. So it is about really listening and partnering more effectively. Next. You're going to hear this word quite a bit, the pivot word, because it is, we have been doing good things and we've been doing good things together. We've been raising awareness, growing the industry, creating standards to establish best practices that evolve over time for continuous improvement. It's about, you know, we say many times, you can't make good decisions without good information. So it is about generating reports and information so we can know where we are and where we're going, how we can improve our own personal performance. It's about convening and engagement, and as well as really looking at how we stabilize our funding and business model in order to maintain an effective voice and catalyst for the industry. So all those are good things. But what we heard loud and clear is that we have a sense of urgency. We have got to move what we know to do into action and scale it up. So it is about being a more effective leader with a clear direction of travel and where we need to go and what we need to do, and then have some more concrete guidance on preferred fibers and materials. So what does it mean to lead on problem solving for the entire industry and that fiber portfolio? And this is especially where roundtables can play such a critical role. Data-rich communications, if we're going to require additional investment for that ROI squared to really shift from price to value paradigm, then investors and brands and consumers are not going to be able to invest more in those materials or factories that have renewable energy, et cetera, without understanding and having proof of impact. And so we're going to have to make sure that there is that proof of impact in order to leverage and get to that ROI squared positioning. And convening in partnership, you're going to hear that over and over again, is that's going to be our methodology for really leveraging. We need to get to where it's not 1 + 1 is 2, but 1 + 1 is 4+, you know, that we're really leveraging our respective strengths. Next slide. You probably saw this slide in Vancouver, and there is, we're going to put the full disclaimer that there's different numbers on what that fiber production percentage might be. It's been as low as 10% and high as 40% in some of the brands we've talked to. But the reality is that it's going to take an all of the above strategy to get where we need to be. And we need to really focus and push where our strengths are. And that's in the fiber production area. So let's go to the next slide. And again, focus on here's where we partner, how we partner. Many of you have heard me say across the top, you know, people are signing those science-based targets. They're signing UNFCCC and Sustainable Development Goals, and they're committing to biodiversity notions and circular programs. And then they call us back and say, how are we going to get there? Or why should there be 400 brands keep creating 400 different biodiversity strategies? Let's get together and create one and align our strengths along that. So acting not just as islands of good, but joining together for a connected strategy. So you've seen both the announcements on the fashion conveners and our collaboration, and the more in-depth agreement, again, with Sustainable Apparel Coalition, ZDHC, and AII on actually integrating some of our tools and programs, which you'll hear more about in the months to come. Next. And, you know, there's always the plus. It's very interesting to think about where we are on making sure that we reduce greenhouse gases. That is essential and critical to maintain quality of life on our planet. But we've got to do it in a way that also amplifies the positive impacts of soil health and water and biodiversity. So when we roll out this strategy, the soil health and biodiversity and water are elements and components that help us deliver to this greenhouse gas strategy. Next. And so as we started looking at this, we called 9 different people. We called Qantas, and we called SCS, and we called Decarbonization Project, and we called World Resource Institute, and 9 different people gave us 9 different methodologies on what should our baseline be when it comes to climate. And where do we start that baseline, and how do we measure progress over time? And so it was a little frustrating in that, okay, where's the starting line and where's that baseline? So we decided to get some help. So Michael Sadowski came to us, and we've been working with him on how do we define this baseline, and how do we get everyone to agree on a set of common denominators. And so we're actually still working on that and convening a group of leaders in the climate space to really look at that climate piece. So let's just let you know a little bit about Michael, and let's go on to the next slide. And if you have not read this book, you must, or this report. I think it's really essential. And the other thing, if you haven't seen it, it's called H2O, the molecule that made us. It is about water, of course, and it's about 3 hours, but well worth watching. I know we don't need more doom and gloom in our life with all the challenges that we're facing, and with COVID and fires and earthquakes and things like that. But I think being informed people and truly understanding the reality of what we're facing makes us better equipped to lead through this time. And so I think this is definitely a good report to read. If you haven't, then please do so. And in the next slide, you'll see just an example of some of the data and information. And what I like about it is there's pictures and graphs too. So it's easy to grasp and understand, very quickly of why do we need to be in certain places and make the decisions that we need to make. So you'll be hearing more about we've got to be bold, and we've got to be brave and courageous to get where we need to go. Next slide. Again, I'm going to just reconfirm that our focus is on the tier 4. It's not that we don't care about the other places and spaces. We're certainly participating and partnering in those areas, but this is where we're going to make the deep dive. Next slide. And for now, these are the materials where we're going to start. Cotton, poly, nylon, man-made cellulosics, wool, down, and leather. These are some of our core focus areas and where we're delivering programs and have the ability to influence and drive impact. So certainly this is where we're going to focus. And the next slide is a disclosure statement. As I shared, we had several phone calls of where do we get these baselines? And because different groups have different kinds of normalized data, or it's not normalized, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. For the purpose of this baseline, we are using Higgs MSI greenhouse gas midpoints for this data. And full disclosure again, we know MSI and LCAs do not give us a complete picture of what the potential or impacts may be on a fiber or material. We know it's a snapshot in time. It only covers certain elements. So we're really looking at, and if you'll look at that last sentence and bullet point, we are very committed to pursuing an LCA approach. And it's going to take people that are a lot smarter than I am to take this from a simple math formula of material times the MSI score equals impact to an algebra equation that says material times MSI plus impacts that we're finding out of our standards, plus soil and other greenhouse information that we can get from different groups, is going to be a more robust picture of our impacts. And you may have seen also that the tool that we created for GAP a couple of years ago on fiber selection and being able to help guide a brand in fiber choices, it is more along that line of the algebraic formula. So that's come back to us in-house. It's getting a scrub and will be made available for a public stakeholder process, probably by the conference time. And we should be able to have that rolled out by the first of the year. So we're very excited about making sure tools and resources are available to the community in order to make informed decisions. So again, we are very committed to an LCA plus approach. We know that we need to have a more balanced and holistic perspective on this impact data. Next slide. So here we are. On the left, you're going to find the summaries and everything that Michael has done. On the right, this information is taken from our preferred fiber and materials reports. So when you look at the impacts right now that is being had across a number of the materials, you can see that polyester is in volume the largest user and is right now at that 27% of emissions. What is a little surprising is the leather impact at 6.6 of volume and 37% of impacts. So as you can see, all across these core materials where we're starting are opportunities for improvement. We've also done this slide with and without leather, just to give you that context. So Donna, if you'll go to the next slide, then it's without leather. And I have had several conversations, not only with cotton folks, but man-made cellulosics folks. We know that, again, full disclosure, this was MSI data only. We know it is not complete. So these numbers are, just take those numbers for the snapshot in time that they are. And as we go through the deep dives, we'll definitely pull in more information and turn that into the LCA plus approach. Next slide. And so here's what it looks like when we turn those pies into a direction of travel. So if you look at that business as usual, with a 3% growth, we've got a significant challenge when it comes to changing and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. We played around with a lot of the numbers. What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? There's no single solution. One of my favorite sayings is that complex problems require multiple interventions. So we're going to have to go to an all of the above strategy. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is what a potential all of the above strategy looks like. We're going to have to get to at least 50% preferred cottons and polys and man-made cellulosics, et cetera. We're going to have to address the innovation gap. One of the things that is not addressed in the aggressive fiber substitution portion of this is we really don't have the numbers of what does it look like to really implement aggressive regenerative and carbon sequestration practices in our forests, in our grazing systems, and in our cultivated systems. So this is going to be one of the next areas of research and white papers that we'll do in collaboration with others in the industry, is what does that aggressive substitution look like and how do we get there? And then what are the other opportunities that we look at closing this innovation gap? So this will be a big, hairy, audacious goal, one that will require courage and commitment and leadership from our members, especially of you guys are going to have to do more than 50%. We're going to have to hit some 100% targets. We've got to move programs from, we just have a fair trade and, organic yoga line or baby line and check, we're doing organic, check, whatever, or we're doing, preferred cottons or whatever the case may be, to a corporate wide strategy where we're looking at 100% of your fiber source is in the preferred category in order to get where we need to go. So this is something that's going to require bold, again, courageous action for us to get there as an industry. And it's you guys that are on the call now that will be leading the charge on this. And you're the torch bearers in our community to get us where we need to go. Next slide. You're going to all receive this slide deck, so I'm not going to go through some of this. Things that we need to put together beyond this is more complete and robust data. We've got to really look at hard to abate areas in the value chain. We don't have things like microfibers calculated into this. There's definitely some promising next generation materials, and as I mentioned earlier, while we have different studies in specific areas about what regenerative grazing and cultivated and forestry practices look like. That has not been taken into consideration in some of the numbers. So what does it look like to really put those together and promote those best practices? Next slide. So here's a few of those next steps, and Sylvia is going to take you through some of those in a moment. We need to finish the analysis for the in-scope materials. We need to really calculate the emission reductions from existing members, for example, in some of our robust 2020 fiber commitments, and the 2025 Sustainable Cotton Challenge is now over 114 members that have joined that, some with significant volume. And so we expect this particular kind of challenge to help drive that positive impact. Refining the strategy, make sure we're connecting with key stakeholders to align that. That goes back into the partnership piece. And then the partnership piece is also how we can support other related programs and initiatives. Next slide. It's time to give away some more tickets, Donna, as we shift gears here a little bit. So can you give away 3 tickets for us? And I know some questions are starting to pop up. We will get to those in a few moments, but Donna, why don't you give away some tickets right now?
Absolutely, happy to. So the next winner is Patricia Kinsella. I apologize if I did not pronounce that correct. And then we also have Alicia Scrocaro. It's a good thing I'm copying and pasting these in. There you go. Congratulations. And last but not least, Navendu Sharma. And we will give away 4 more throughout the end of the call. And again, we will email each of you with information about how to register.
And we are very excited about the conference and everything that's going to be there. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes. Thank you, Donna, for that. And let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes about how the roundtables have evolved over time. So if you go to the next slide for me. The roundtable started, part of that evolving when we transitioned from Organic Exchange to Textile Exchange in 2010. At that point in time, we started our first roundtable, which was the Organic Cotton Roundtable, to really to really follow through that we needed to take specific actions around different materials and fibers and challenges, because the roundtable's purpose was to identify barriers to growth and take that collective action, that there are issues and challenges that no one brand or one organization or group can solve themselves. And so having that mechanism of the roundtable to do that. So being that trusted authority of voice and figuring it out, influencing the standards, input into the standards and strategy has been a strong role for the roundtables and part of our core driver. And also, obviously, it's about convening the community so that it is that collective action. Next slide. But where we really feel like we can leverage the roundtables more effectively is really evolving to make sure that not only do the roundtables continue to play a role in defining and being that voice for the trusted authority in that particular topic area, and we're convening the community for that collective and connected action, but now's the time to really leverage the roundtables into that acceleration space. Next slide. And you saw this slide earlier. I'm not going to go over it again, but this is at the heart of some of where the pivot will need to be for the roundtables, because it has been about sharing information and sharing best practices and what are the data sets we need to do? How do we define? How do we start communicating more effectively? Do we need to do a white paper here or do a strategic intervention piece? Or so each roundtable has been acting a little bit differently. So really organizing the roundtables in order to have more consistent and continuity across them has been really important role to play. But again, we've got to get into that pivot of really taking this robust group of roundtables and the people involved at that level into accelerating adoption. Next slide. So the roundtable evolution, again, here's the current activities that the roundtables have identified that they are currently involved in. That's ecosystem education, identifying challenges, leveraging stakeholder engagement. There's been several white papers that have been issued, and developing and maintaining industry fiber commitments. And we need to move to, and that would be the next slide, really expanding the Climate Plus focus. And so how do the roundtables, specifically the roundtable folks are the ones in the trenches, you know, working on specific issues. And so how do we really leverage that stakeholder engagement and really develop and maintain stronger industry fiber commitments? And doing, you know, where do we need to go on connecting content experts and identifying tools and mapping out key players? So we really see the column on the right is where the roundtables can play a more important role in delivering to the Climate Plus strategy. Next slide. Donna, you get to give away 2 more tickets.
This is actually a very fun part of my job. All right, next winner is Quan Liu. Pasting that in, one moment. There you go, and one more. Nagavini K is all I have, the last initial. So again, we'll be emailing you. So yeah, congratulations. A few more coming up at the end.
Good mix of folks. And again, if you already are registered at the conference, you can share your pass with someone else. Next slide, Donna. I keep on trying to push in my computer to move the slide along, like, oh, I'm not in control today. And so with that, I am going to turn some of the next steps and details over to Sevilla in order to really look at what some of the next steps are with those roundtables, when the next meetings are. So we wanted you to have today to really get that appetizer a bit ahead of the rest of the community on where the strategy is coming from, so that you can be thinking about it. So Sevilla, over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Thank you so much for that introduction to Textile Exchange's new evolving Climate Plus strategy. We've been doing a lot of work over the last year since we introduced it at last year's conference. As you can see, a lot of work developing this strategy, what it means to Textile Exchange, and how we can assist the wire industry in supporting climate reduction across our entire industry. I just want to take a moment to say I've been monitoring the Q&A chat box over on the side of my screen, and I see you guys. I see you, Jeff. I see you, Martha. We will get to your questions. Please, there's several really good ones here, so please keep them coming. We will get to them. We have blocked out some time towards the end, so please keep the questions coming. There's some really good ones, and we are watching those come in. So next slide, Donna. So as you recall, Lorraine specified that Textile Exchange focuses on the Tier 4 raw material development. So that includes the growing of the cotton, the manufacturing of the polyester. That's really where we focus. We trust that we have partners who are focusing on all the other areas. Those are not our areas of focus or expertise. We really are laser focused on the raw materials. So while those other areas certainly do deserve attention, and we recognize that, we also know that by spreading ourselves too thin, we reduce our effectiveness. So that's why we are focusing on Tier 4. Next slide. So within our Climate Plus strategy, there's an evolution here, as Lorraine mentioned. We are decarbonizing our materials portfolio. That's what we're going to focus on today. But looking ahead, we're looking to natural climate solutions. One of the questions in the chat box did mention regenerative and circular. Those are definitely valid, and we will be focusing on that. However, today's focus is on the roundtables, which are specifically about materials portfolios. And then the next step in this is to transition to a circular economy. Again, that's a very valuable effort. We will be focusing on that later, but today we're looking at materials portfolio. Next. So again, we're looking at this slide, what Lorraine mentioned. If you look at the column on the right, by business as usual, there's 846 really million tons of carbon produced every year. By reducing, using preferred materials, we can actually reduce that down to 533, and that's only by about half. Now, of course, that's a fairly realistic assumption. Of course, we would all love for it to be 100%. That would be great. We'll shoot for the stars and hope for the moon, right? So ideally, we need to get down to 336 million tons, but there's an innovation gap there. How can we address that? Well, by leveraging our industry stakeholders through the roundtables, that's where we can start to develop solutions and really tackle the things that are in our collective way towards getting to those higher goals. Next slide. So let's look at cotton, for example. We saw on an earlier slide that cotton plays a significant role in our greenhouse gas emissions, but it can also play a very powerful role in reducing them. And we have technologies already for how those reductions can happen. So how can we as an industry escalate and advance our goals towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions for cotton? How can we accelerate that progress? If you look at the bar graph on the bottom left, you'll see 2019 levels in the orange. By 2030, if we remain at business as usual, it goes quite high, up to 80 million. But with these new targets, if we can all keep on track, we can actually reduce it down to 45%, which could be, it looks like it's about 30 million. Now, if we keep looking at cotton, next slide, what are some of the ways that we can look at this data? Now, we already have, like I said, we already have some pretty good tools in place for how to measure that. That's probably it's the fiber that Textile Exchange has been looking at the longest. And as you probably know, the Organic Cotton Roundtable is the oldest roundtable that Textile Exchange has been developing. Next slide. So we can also look at the increase of preferred cotton and proliferate the low greenhouse gas farming. So again, these are technologies that have been developed. There are still some gaps towards getting us all the way completely, but the great news is that cotton has a really great track record of innovation because we've been looking at it so long, and industry partners have been tackling these challenges for quite a while now. So we have solutions in hand. How can we roll those out faster? How can we accelerate the growth of this? Next slide. Next slide, please. In comes the Organic Cotton Roundtable. So this is one of the roundtables that we will have this year, which will be in 2 parts. Now, as I said, this is the oldest roundtable that Textile Exchange has been developing and promoting. So it is our most mature and it has the most participants. So if you aren't familiar with it already, it's a global stakeholder platform that supports and brings together the organic cotton community to be inspired, mobilized, and equipped to act. We also have in development, next slide, please. We also have the Sustainable Cotton Roundtable, which takes it a step further. So we do recognize that organic cotton is a major player in the industry. There's a lot of great work that can be done there, but there are many other great sustainable cotton solutions out there that are worthy of people investigating. Not every company can go 100% organic, and also the organic industry may not be able to supply that 100% of that demand. So there are other players stepping in. Textile Exchange as an organization does promote several sustainable cotton initiatives. And within those, we evaluate each one, particularly for their drive on continuous improvement. That's something that's very important to us. So while each one of those initiatives may not be perfect yet, we are working with them consistently to make sure that they're evolving their strategies so that it's not a static one-size-fits-all solution. It can progress as time evolves. So, and that will be on December 18th. Please participate in that one as well. Great solutions to find there. If your company uses a lot of cotton, this is a great way to learn about some other initiatives and solutions that could be relevant for you if organic cotton is too steep. So this could be what do you call it? The plane takes off, right? It's a takeoff strategy for if you're starting with 100% conventional cotton and you're looking for new ways to evolve your sourcing strategy. This would be a great roundtable to participate in to help you learn about some of the initiatives that can help you make progress towards your goals. Next slide. So polyester was the other big fiber that we looked at. We do know that polyester also has a very significant carbon footprint, and polyester is a very significant part of our collective industry's material utilization. So polyester is another fiber that we'll be looking at. Next slide, please. By expanding the use of recycled polyester, we can go a long way toward reducing our greenhouse gas footprint. You'll see some ways that we can do that on this slide. Next slide. And as you would guess, Textile Exchange, let's see, expanding the use of recycled polyester. These are also some solutions you can engage in major polyester fiber manufacturers with your supply chains. Depending on your needs, you can invest in partnerships. You can also partner with innovation-oriented organizations. Next slide. And a great way to find out about those, if you're not participating already, is to participate in the Recycled Polyester Roundtable. That will be December 14th. This roundtable is a global, as all our roundtables are, a global multi-stakeholder network aiming to increase the uptake of recycled polyester. They also have a wonderful recycled polyester commitment, which I think they exceeded well ahead of their goal. They may be looking at expanding that. Next slide. So we also recognize that there are several animal fibers involved in our portfolio, our collective industry portfolio. We want to identify and share low carbon grazing practices across all those animals. Any fiber that is derived from an animal source can also benefit from low grazing practices. Next slide. So we have several roundtables that will be convening to discuss various aspects of animal fiber production. They start with the animal welfare fibers and materials roundtable on December 7th. So this will set the frame for the specific roundtables with a focus on animal derived fibers, but similar to this assembly where we're discussing all fibers, that particular roundtable will be taking a general look across all, because there are some consistent issues across all animal fiber production. And then we will do deep dives into individual fibers. Next slide. Leather, for example, clearly a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Now, a lot of that has to do with the raising of the cattle. As many of you know, leather itself is an actual byproduct of the beef industry. Cattle is raised for food consumption, and the byproduct of that being leather. However, leather still carries the major greenhouse gas impact of the cattle production, which, as we saw in an earlier slide, is significant, especially in proportion to the actual material usage. Next slide. So for that, we have the Responsible Leather Roundtable. This group has been incredibly active, and they're developing several different methodologies and ways that you can address the climate impacts if you have leather in your supply chain. Please attend this roundtable to learn about new options that may be available to you, and also participate and collaborate with other industry partners towards making progress towards your goals. Next slide. Wool, another animal fiber that has significant greenhouse gas impacts. Next slide. Several animal fibers will be addressed in one roundtable. We have alpaca, mohair, and wool, which have some very closely related issues. So while you may not use alpaca in your supply chain, there are actually several solutions that this particular roundtable can address, because there are some learnings from alpaca that apply to wool, vice versa, mohair as well. This is intended to guide and support the respective associated standards that Textile Exchange has that can help you discuss with your customers the fact that you are sourcing responsible alpaca, mohair, and wool, utilizing Textile Exchange standards. Next slide. We also have the Responsible Cashmere Roundtable, which will be addressing specifically cashmere as well. And all participants from all of these animal fiber roundtables are encouraged to join the Animal Fiber and Materials Roundtable on December 7th as an introduction to how these individual fiber roundtables can leverage their stakeholder engagement. Next slide. Man-made cellulosics, a very significant portion of our industry's fiber usage. And as you would expect, next slide, we have a man-made cellulosics roundtable. Again, because this is such a significant part of our industry, we are producing this one in two parts, December 9th and December 11th. The man-made cellulosic fiber roundtable includes viscose, lyocell, and modal. Sustainability is in mind with experiencing real momentum and has become a priority for many brands and retailers. If your organization utilizes man-made cellulosics, this is a great roundtable to participate in. Not only can you learn a lot from your peers in this organization, but also your contribution is really valuable on all the roundtables, which is why we ask your participation, not just so you can learn, but also so you can help develop the strategies for how we can surmount these large climate goal challenges that we collectively have. Next slide. We also have the biosynthetics roundtable. If any of you are in part of the evolving biosynthetics work that's going on, very interesting roundtable, some very good solutions to be had there. If that's something that your organization is interested in, we encourage you to attend that on December 8th. Next slide. Accelerating circularity. Now, we saw on an earlier slide how circularity is definitely going to be an issue that Textile Exchange will address down the road. This is going to be a significant contributor to how we collectively reduce our greenhouse gases. And the Accelerating Circularity organization has been focusing on an apparel industry collaborative project designed to accelerate the textile industry's move from linear to circular. So this particular roundtable will be a great way to get a peek into that and contribute into how circularity can evolve within our industry. Next slide. Home and Hospitality Roundtable. I actually lead this one. If you participate in the home and hospitality industry, you know that our issues are very different and distinct from those in apparel or textiles in general. We have some really unique challenges as well, some unique possibilities to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gases in the Climate Plus strategy. So please attend that roundtable to learn more and also contribute your ideas for how we can collectively make progress and accelerate our involvement with reducing climate greenhouse gases. Next slide. Question and answer. Wow, since I've been talking, let's see, we have so many more. Okay, it looks like some have been answered already. That's great, but I'm gonna
typing away, Sevilla, so I posted
great.
A few of those, and so yeah, we can start with, yeah, I've answered like 11 of them. So.
Wow. You've been busy over there. Thank you. Let's see. Well, we have a question from Sylvie Verent. I hope I'm pronouncing that. Veron. Let's see. Oh, yes. Donna just reminded me, registration for the roundtables is free. Please look in your, let's see. We will include the link in the slide deck, which we'll email out to everyone. It's free. It's also separate from the conference. It's on a different platform, so you do need to register for the respective roundtable that you'd like to join. Please register for that individually. So let's see. Let's go back to Sylvie's question. I understand that plant-based leather is preferred to animal leather. Is that correct? Well, ideally, I would say yes, but here's the trick. Plant-based leathers are going to be difficult to scale. So while we have some really interesting developments happening in the lab right now, scaling those solutions up to consumer level is going to be challenging. So I don't know, Lorraine, do you know of any LCAs on any of the new plant-based leather technologies?
And I would say that, Sevilla, while there are some people that would prefer plant-based leather to some of the solutions, so much of the perspective on the lens of preferred fiber is going to come down to personal choices and values. So while Sevilla may have said yes, I would say no. And this is something that, you know, we're working across, that, you know, each fiber material has its purpose and its function. And so it's going to be, there's going to be some brands and some consumers that don't want any animal-based fiber in their program, while there's going to be others that want to support that. So it's going to be interesting as we evolve this preferred fiber portfolio, because some of it is going to boil down to personal choice and protection of indigenous cultures. But the bottom line is, regardless of what material it is, there are improvements to be made to make it to where we are reducing greenhouse gases, to where we're being more responsible on land use. So we are really not in comparing one fiber to another, but making best in class. So how do we take plant-based options, make sure they're, you know, not using additional synthetic petroleum-based solutions, but so anyway, it is complex. And so, yes, we need to have those options of biosynthetics, but we also need to take the materials we have and convert them into more sustainable solutions. And so it's not about one preferred over the other as far as use. It will be how we drive positive impacts along continuous improvement.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think Simona Azzolini, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, has a couple of great questions that are related. So why don't we take them one at a time? She says, and I think Lorraine is a good one to answer this one. How can the gap between standard and organic cotton, conventional and organic cotton, be reduced? Equally for polyester, we know that the plastic industry has been battling with rPET being more expensive than virgin in recent years, and this is a huge barrier to the shift. So two-part question. How can the gap between conventional and organic cotton be reduced? And I assume she's asking about the greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, it could be either price or greenhouse gas reductions or whatever, because it's interesting because the current business as usual model with the price paradigm where it is has created the pollution and the poverty and the problem. So part of the challenge when we ask our members, what are the barriers to adopting preferred materials? And the single answer that came across all of the selections was price. In general, preferred fibers cost more. We're investing as a farmer, we're investing differently in soil health practices. We're creating, biodiversity and ecosystems. There's different investments we're making, and bottom line, the current price structure has, again, created the poverty and the problems. So it's why are we looking for parity? We're at a time where if we're going to make these preferred fibers work, we're going to have to invest in the industry and the solution. I know there was one about shortages. The thing that's going to get us away from shortage is clear market messages and commitment from the market to support the innovative and more sustainable fibers. And so that is going to cost more. And so we need to convert from a price to value paradigm. And the brands that are doing that successfully, they're looking at their business models. They're talking to their consumers about value. And so it is truly a paradigm shift that is going to be required in order to drive the adoption of preferred materials. I don't care what it is, whether it's recycled polyester or, more responsible leather or, the cotton, whatever solutions out there, there's going to be an investment made by the farmers, by the producers, in order to invest in more sustainable and responsible practices.
Thanks so much, Lorraine. We also have a question here from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Rajmi Chakrabarti. As per the Climate Plus strategy, we can see that carbon sequestering is considered as one of the tools to avoid climate change. Does this mean that PFM will move more towards regenerative farming?
Absolutely. Regenerative practices are something that can occur in any kind of production system. And it's something that is being talked about right now, for example, in the cotton industry, with the groups that we have in the 2025 Sustainable Cotton Challenge. Got great conversations with BCI, US Cotton Trust Protocol, Cotton Made in Africa, Cotton Connect, the whole portfolio of, one thing that we can agree on is stronger, healthy soil practices. If we look at that and all of us are adopting soil as a strong investment that we make across the board, what kind of positive impact can there be if all of a sudden, it won't happen suddenly, but let's say within 5 years, we've nailed our healthy soil practices and we've eliminated synthetic fertilizers in cotton. And so the greenhouse gas agenda is taking some of the political hotspots maybe out of the conversations where we can have agreed upon solutions that address foundations. And we address healthy soils that starts increasing biodiversity. We start building a stronger ecosystem and through crop rotations and other solutions for healthy soils. And so regenerative practices is definitely going to be a direction of travel, whether that's going to be in cultivated land, forestry management, and grazing area. It's something that we can unite upon and have a strong direction of travel that will drive positive high impacts for greenhouse gases.
Thanks, Lorraine. I would like to take this question. It's from David Harms. Does one have to be a member of Textile Exchange to participate in roundtables? Absolutely not. We invite anyone across the stakeholder spectrum within the textile industry who is willing to collaborate and help us progress our entire industry forward. We invite anyone to participate. We expect that everyone will contribute and be a positive influence. So please, if you have an interest in progressing the sustainability of our collective textile industry, please, there's so many different roundtables that we have. There's something for everybody. So find one that suits your company's mission and purpose, or something that you have a particular expertise in. Please sign up. It's on our website, and the link will be included with the slide deck. Yes, please participate. All of our roundtables are in the first couple of weeks of December, and that information again is found on our website. Please register and participate. We look forward to having your expertise. Anything you want to say on that, Lorraine?
No, I would just, as a 501c3, we're here for the public good. And so while there are some things that are definitely member benefits, this is one of the areas where we engage with the broader community, and you guys are part of the catalyst. You're part of the solution on helping us deliver to that public good. So welcome aboard. It's a place where there's definitely open doors.
Let's see, we have so many questions coming in, and I apologize. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, and I'm scrolling through trying to find the most relevant ones. For some questions, we may have to respond to you individually afterwards. But let's see. Simona has a follow-up question. She says, "Thank you, Lorraine. I agree on the data. My comment is related to recent journalists that are questioning some figures, such as the industry accounting for 10% of carbon, carbon dioxide. And I think that it can affect consumers' trust."
Yeah, that is one of the things that we're working with, not only with WWF and Sustainable Apparel Coalition, but others, of like, how do we make sure, and actually with UNFCCC on their deep dive around cotton and poly and man-made cellulosics, is how do we make sure we have that robust data set in order to build the confidence and have that strong direction of travel. So we may not have perfect data. We know we don't. There's gaps and holes, but we do have enough data to have a direction of travel. And so that's where we're coming out with our Climate Plus strategy. Let's get moving. We cannot afford to continue the debate and keep up just conversations only. It's time. We have proven solution. It's time to scale those up. We know what we need to do. Let's get after it. And so I think over time, there's always going to be naysayers. There's going to be people that want more information, and they can be where they are. You know, some people you'll never convince, but we're going to keep moving, and we hope the majority of you move with us in this direction of travel.
Thanks, Lorraine. I would like to field this question from Mukul Agrawal. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry if not. Mukul says, Climate Plus is a good initiative. Are we going to create some working groups which would develop methodologies for each type of fibers so that industry is engaged in the development? Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what we're addressing today, is the evolution of our roundtables from being an industry educational tool to being an industry acceleration tool. So now that we've been collectively working to educate our industry for a few years now, different time spans depending on each roundtable, Organic Cotton Roundtable being the oldest, obviously. Now that we've been educating and collectively looking at these solutions for several years now is the time that we take it to the next level. So this is exactly the question that you're asking, is exactly what we're doing. We are creating, well, we're not creating, we're taking the existing roundtables that we've had for years and evolving them to the next level. And each one will have to figure out its own way to develop those methodologies for each type of fiber. Do they need a different methodology? Are there methodologies that already exist? Wool is going to be different from cotton, is going to be different from recycled polyester. Each fiber has its own unique challenges and opportunities. And similar with home and hospitality industry. That industry has its own challenges, but also its own opportunities to make significant progress towards these goals. So that's exactly why we have these different roundtables, is to take a specific look at each of those fibers, analyze where are the challenges, where are the opportunities, what's in our way and how can we make progress. Anything you want to add to that, Lorraine?
No, I think that that's perfect. I know that we're also going to be having an overarching climate that kind of is overarching on addressing that. And then there will be specific ones to each one of the fibers that will be addressed through the roundtables. So yes, we definitely next steps on this. So Savia, perfect answer.
And Sylvie has a follow-up question, and hers, I've seen this similar question come across, so I think hers kind of sums up what several people are asking in a similar way. Sylvie Véron, she says, is it better to have certifications for animal leather instead of a shift to plant-based? Now, I think that's kind of hitting at the impacts projects that one of our colleagues, Anne Gillespie, is spearheading. Lorraine, do you want to give a little insight into that?
Say that again. You skipped
So,
out.
sorry. So the question is it better to have certifications for animal leather instead of a shift to plant-based? And this is related to several questions have kind of been related to this. And I think it has something to do, I think the question may be addressed with our direct impacts, that the project that our colleague Anne Gillespie is working on.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's multifaceted because, you know, this fiber solution, and I see another one in here about the durability of a material and things like that. So there's not just one single answer because form follows function is what's the function of that, you know, and again, how do we take the current materials that are there because we're here day one now. And we need to work with what we have, but also drive innovation for the future. So what is preferred in 5 years, maybe, you know, is going to be a little bit different than what it is today. So again, and there's another one, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Where do we start today? And so it's a little bit of an all of the above. It's like, how do we improve cotton? How do we improve hemp? How do we improve, you know, all the different fibers, but leather is certainly one of the high impacts. So it's going to be about grazing. It's going to be about improving the current systems and better data and better information. We know the HIG MSI doesn't have as robust a data set as we'd like to have. It's going to be one part of that algebraic equation. You know, I think I said earlier that we used to choose preferred materials of MSI times this gives us our answer, but now there's going to be a need for a more robust data set with information on our standards, information on carbon, information on biodiversity, more robust water use. So there's going to be this algebraic formula on achieving what is a preferred fiber rather than just one simple measurement. So stay tuned for that. And I would say if you're really interested in the data piece, let us know. We'll plug you into some of those conversations. You may have noticed the announcement that we had to partner more closely with Sustainable Apparel Coalition. We're certainly working on a layered solution. I mentioned at the first, an LCA plus. So we're going to need some robust, innovative, plant-based materials, and we're also going to need to improve current materials and have them to be more sustainable. And someone asked about putting in a chat for the links. So sounds like we're going to be doing a nice follow-up on some questions, Donna, to this group, and we'll certainly be sharing the presentation, and we're available here. Just touch base with us. So Donna, back to you. Looks like we need to wrap it up.
Okay, I will scroll on to give you a little bit of information about the conference. For those of you who may not be aware, it is taking place November 2nd through the 6th. We do have an exciting keynote speaker that's been confirmed, and that's Alexandra Cousteau. And we were, of course, hoping to have her in person, and she was planning to do some photo ops and things. So that part is a little bit disappointing, but she's actually doing so much more for us because it is virtual, and she's offering some exciting VIP opportunities for sponsors and things like that. So, so yeah, check the agenda for what's going on there. And we're excited to have her on Tuesday, November 3rd of the conference. Registration is open, and we do already have actually a lot of registrations. So I hope our free passes today are not to registered participants, but we hope that you can still use them either way by passing them on to colleagues or your supply chain or whoever you want to share them with. Conference tracks this year include biodiversity, climate action, circularity, transparency, standards and certification and preferred fiber material topics. So all of that information is on our website. If you click on the roundtables links, you'll be able to navigate around on that, the web page there. And we'll make sure that this information is also included in the email that we send out with a recording to the webinar also. We do still have virtual exhibit booths available. So this is going to be an exciting networking opportunity for attendees. Since we're losing the face-to-face value, we're creating a lot of extra opportunities for networking in this virtual space. And so we do still have some of those available. If you're interested, you can reach out to conference@textileexchange.org and we can get you some more information on that. And then last but not least, we do have 2 conference tickets to still give away. So let me run over to my randomizer. Bart Bullard is the next winner. Popping back into the chat. Congratulations, Bart. And Fernando Belisay, popping that in here as well. I'm sure Sevilla and Mai's pronunciations of your names has provided some comedic relief today, and we apologize if we did not get them right. Congratulations to everyone. And Lorraine, you want to wrap us up?
Again, thank you for your time and being torchbearers where you go. I really look forward to partnering with you more closely as we roll out this Climate Plus strategy, and look for you to be some of the activators and catalysts in the roundtables. So thank you for your time today. We look forward to sharing more. I know there was a lot of questions we didn't get to, so Dawn and Rose will help us follow up on those. But again, thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the circles. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you to our speakers, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, as Lorraine mentioned, all unanswered questions will be answered via email, and an email will be sent to all registered participants with a link to today's presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.